Hey guys, welcome to Andrew Invests. On this channel, we like to discuss quality companies because investing in quality companies is the safest, most efficient way to build wealth in the long term. So many people spend so much time learning how to make money, but they don't spend the equivalent amount of time learning how to manage money once they've got it. Why is that? I personally think they're both equally important. So today I want to discuss a quality company, Apple.
Introducing Apple Vision Pro.
So, unless you've been living under a rock for the last week, you will have heard about Apple's Vision Pro. Its first ever VR headset, and it's been in the works for a few years now. Was I impressed with the final product? Yes, definitely. Technically, I thought it was brilliant. However, there remains the price tag of $3,500. That's a crazy amount. And I don't think most people will be able to afford that. To put it in comparison, the Quest Pro, Meta's best VR headset currently, is around $1,000. And the price tag on that is already complained about. Yes, Meta has also announced the Quest 3, its VR headset successor to the Quest 2, and a price tag of around $500 for it. That means Meta is coming out guns blazing, and it's not just going to lie down in the war against Apple. So far, it's been a cold war, and it's been simmering on and off for the last few years, with both Tim Cook and Mark Zuckerberg having thinly veiled contempt for each other.
No reason, go for neon belly. Miguel, go for neon belly.
Something tells me that if Tim Cook and Mark Zuckerberg end up having a physical altercation, there's only going to be one winner. But for the fight of their companies, Meta and Apple, who's going to end up on top? And how does it affect my portfolio? Let's get into that now. So as you can see, both Meta and Apple are huge components of my portfolio, sitting at number 1 and number 2, and they've done really well over the last year in particular. I don't plan on increasing my holdings in either of these companies yet, unless there's a significant dip. But with regards to the VR war, I think it's a pretty good setup. I stand to win whether Apple or Meta wins the lion's share of the market. And even if the market is to fail and nobody ends up adopting VR, I think that the amount of R&D money that goes straight back into shareholder cash flows is also a net win. So this is a win-win-win scenario in my opinion. Apple and Meta famously fell out after Apple changed its iPhone privacy policies to prevent third-party apps from tracking users and their behavior on phones. So that caused Meta's share price to absolutely tank because they weren't able to make as much revenue per user anymore. And although the share price has since recovered, Mark Zuckerberg at the time had the bright idea that he wanted to create his own ecosystem separate from iOS and the iPhone. And in doing so, he thought that VR would be the way forward. Now that Apple has followed Meta into VR, this must be Mark Zuckerberg's worst nightmare. How has he responded to the announcement of the Vision Pro, and what are his thoughts on it?
I think having Apple come in and share that vision will make a lot of people who are fans of their products really consider that. And then, of course, the $3,500 price, on the one hand, I get it with all the stuff that they're trying to pack in there. On the other hand, a lot of people aren't going to find that to be affordable. So I think that there's a chance that them coming in actually increases demand for the overall space, and that Quest 3 is actually the primary beneficiary of.
What Zuckerberg said makes sense. If the Vision Pro is successful, there will be more interest in the VR and metaverse space, which will lead to more interest from people who can't afford the $3,500 and will end up buying the much cheaper Quest 3 or any of their other future products. But the main issue here is a question of economics and how much of the industry's profits will be captured by Apple versus Meta. If we look at the smartphone industry as a good analogy or comparison, we can see that Apple captures the lion's share of all profits in the smartphone industry. Even though it only has about 50% of the revenue, it gets 85% of the profits. With Apple selling their VR device at such a high price, you could definitely foresee a future where a similar thing happens in the VR space.
Just focused on somewhat different things, right? Apple has always, I think focused on building really kind of high-end things, whereas our focus has been on we have a more democratic ethos. We want to build things that are accessible to a wider number of people. We've sold tens of millions of Quest devices. My understanding, just based on rumors, I don't have any special knowledge on this, is that Apple is building about 1 million of their device, right? So
he puts it in quite a diplomatic way there, but what he's effectively saying is that Meta will cede the high end of the market to Apple. It will allow them to sell low quantities of their units with very high margins and high prices, whilst Meta will focus on the lower end of the market, mass producing units for cheaper prices at lower margins for people who can't afford Apple products. Now, as someone who owns both Meta and Apple stock, that doesn't bother me too much because I'm going to capture both ends of the market with my shares in both companies. However, if I was solely a Meta shareholder, I would be pretty disappointed to hear that, even though he's dressed it up quite nicely there. Because Meta has invested so much into the VR space, trying to get it popular, and into the technology itself, you would really expect Meta to capture the lion's share of the profits, not Apple to swoop in at the last second and then get it for itself. So I also think this really displays the power of Apple branding and the ecosystem. The fact that people could potentially even be willing to spend this amount of money just so that the product can integrate into, their Mac or their iPhone, stuff like that, seamlessly. That really displays the power of Apple and is the main reason that I'm invested in them also.
For some time now?
It is, and they've been testing it with some very select celebrities and influencers who have agreed to keep it under wraps. But we were able to confirm with a couple sources this morning that they are hoping to release this text-based app this summer. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of social media competitors, the one that's coming from a giant. I mean, Meta had...
Not content with merely battling Apple on the VR front, Meta also announced that it has plans to create another social media app that is very similar to Twitter in functionality. I could see there being some movement to this, as there are probably a lot of people on the left who aren't as concerned about free speech and have been put off by Elon Musk's antics on Twitter, could have the potential to move over. The company is also in talks with various celebrities like Oprah Winfrey and even the Dalai Lama to move over. And could that potentially convince people to move? Potentially. However, I personally think that people love Twitter because they love to argue with people from the opposing political side. And if everyone from the left moves over to Barcelona, there won't be anyone for them to argue with. So it just won't be any fun. So I find it hard to see everyone moving over, and I really think this project has the potential to be another white elephant for Meta. I also think that the plan of Meta to populate these accounts using users' Instagram profiles is kind of a flawed one, because most people, in my opinion, use Twitter in the same way that they would use Reddit. They prefer to be anonymous so they can say what they want, like what they want, and not have to worry about everyone that they know seeing that. So I think that it's kind of flawed to be doing that in the first place. You never know though, maybe this could be Meta's first successful social media app since Facebook was launched way back in 2004. And by first ever, I mean not acquired, not Instagram. So I'll be keeping a close eye on it, whether or not it does well. And I'll also be keeping a close eye on various other quality companies that I'm invested in or looking to invest in. So if you guys did get any sort of value from this video or enjoyed it, please leave me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.